to that and take that, just really emotionally devastating on a daily basis. So it's amazing that he's still standing, so to speak.
Right, and for a physician who's normally in a position of admiration and not hearing a lot
Absolutely.
of criticism, yeah, definitely. We did see him break down into tears a few times during that testimony.
Yeah, very hard, just emotionally very tough.
Let's go to Carlos Granda, who is outside the courthouse now. Carlos?
Well, it is getting very crowded out here. More and more people continue to arrive, and every time that a member of the Jackson family arrives, people try to squeeze forward to get a glimpse of them. And the LAPD, you can see them right here. The LAPD is doing its best to try to keep this sidewalk open so that there's at least a way for people to keep going up and down the street here as the fans are waiting to try to go inside, a few of them, or to just try to hear a verdict. Now, I've been trying to talk to some people, if I could talk to you for a second. You've been tweeting back and forth.
Yes, I have.
Is this how what have your friends been telling you? I mean, you're trying to, I guess, give everybody the latest. What are you telling
Right. Well, my girlfriend emailed me and she said, "Verdict, where are you?" I said, "I'm right in the middle of it." She goes, "You're down there?" I said, "Yeah, we're just waiting on it, on pins and needles, and I'm just letting everybody know that it's supposed to come in at 1 o'clock Pacific time."
And what are your thoughts on what could happen?
I think it could go any which way. Hopefully it will be a guilty verdict. That's my feeling, but nowadays, after the Casey Anthony trial, and I can't really predict how a jury thinks anymore. I'm hoping that they will think on the side of Michael Jackson.
So I've noticed you've been on that the whole time. So
Yes.
Is it buzzing with activity? Or
Yes.
people just all over the...
Yeah, they are. They're all over. Everybody's on pins and needles waiting for the verdict.
Thank you so
So,
much.
thank
So that's
you.
an example of what's going on here. People are just trying to get any little bit of information they can. A lot of texting, a lot of tweeting, a lot of emails, just trying to figure out what's going on. You can see that it's getting quite loud as we get closer to that 1 o'clock hour. People here very anxious to see what happens, to hear that verdict. Reporting live from the sidewalk right outside the criminal courts building, I'm Carlos Granda, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Okay, Carlos, things certainly starting to sound like they're heating up. Thanks very much for that. Let's go on over to Robert Olguin. He is outside the courtroom, looks like across the street from the courthouse. Robert.
They're right across the street from where our other reporters are standing, and I can tell you already that there is an intense police presence already starting to build around here. Normally we would see sheriff's deputies that were handling security right outside of the courthouse as family members would come in and out during the trial. Now we're seeing a lot of LAPD police presence down in the corner of Temple and Spring here, almost forming almost a command post, if you will, and you can see them there along the sidewalk as well. Several officers along with that yellow tape that's trying to keep the spectators and the fans and the media corralled in. There's just an arrival right now. It looks like LaToya Jackson just rolled up in that Rolls Royce that's parked right there, and you can see that's LaToya Jackson now. A lot of shouting from the crowd coming her way there. A lot of supporters, a lot of Jackson supporters. A loud reaction now as LaToya appears to have been the final Jackson family member to arrive to hear the verdict. We saw Randy arrive about 20 minutes ago, maybe 10 minutes ago, I should say. And of course, Mother Catherine, Father Joe, Jermaine, and Sister Reby arrived earlier. And so there's LaToya Jackson that just pulled up, much to the delight of the supporters there across the street from me. All of them anticipating the 1 o'clock verdict that, again, is coming down. The jury reaching that verdict, announcing at 11 o'clock this morning that they had arrived at a verdict after 8.5 hours of deliberation. 6 on Friday, 3.5 or 2.5 today, I should say. And they arrived at that verdict and are ready to announce it in the courtroom at 1 o'clock. Judge Michael Pastor made that decision. He had made that decision early on that he would give people a 2-hour notice for the family to get here, for Dr. Conrad Murray and his attorneys to get here, and to alert the media as well to get everybody in position for the announcement of the verdict. Overhead, you can hear television news choppers, you hear LAPD choppers overhead, again, taking a look at the situation from overhead, making sure that this situation doesn't get out of control in terms of the number of people that are here. There's security, of course, at issue, keeping the family safe, keeping everyone else safe. Dr. Conrad Murray and the rest of the folks involved will exit through the rear of the courtroom, or enter through the rear of the courtroom, I should say. There's no really way of knowing how Dr. Conrad Murray will exit if found innocent. Of course, he walks if found guilty. We're not sure if he'll be remanded into custody immediately or if he'll be able to be released on his own recognizance. These are all things we don't know just yet, but they will be entering from the rear of the courtroom. The family has arrived already at the front of the courthouse here. So right now we just continue to wait for the verdict out here as the crowd continues to grow outside of the criminal courts building. Back to you.
All right, Robert, thank you. We have several reporters downtown. You see that Air 7 HD is flying above. One thing to note, we were told it would be about a 2-hour time frame from the time the verdict was announced that it had been reached until it's actually read in court. One of the reasons is because everyone needs time to get from the various points that they are located to get to the courthouse. Of course, the prosecution is there at the courthouse. That takes them no time. So it will take Conrad Murray a little longer wherever he is, and his defense attorneys need time. But one thing to note, as you saw with Carlos, the crowd continues to grow there around him. So as we have given time for the players in this to arrive, so too we've given time for more people who have some sort of interest, however, whatever level of interest they have. Sometimes they just want to go and be a part of it. They just want to watch. They just want to be there. Onlookers, rubberneckers, if you want to look at it as a car accident. But that's what's going on now. More and more people are beginning to show a presence in downtown, which you can see the crowd beginning to grow from Air 7 HD.
That's right. And are we going to go to Scott Reif in Air 7 HD at this point? No?
No, we're
okay,
just we're continuing to go along here as the Los Angeles jury. We mentioned that they have reached the verdict, deliberating less than 9 hours after 6 weeks of trial. We know that the prosecutors in this case tried to show that Dr. Murray was reckless, that he abandoned Jackson while he was under the effects of propofol. This again, June 25th of 2009. Attorneys for Murray counter that Jackson was addicted to the drugs and actually self-administered this fatal dose when Murray left the room. The jurors have now made their decision on who they believed in this case.
That's right. And prosecutors had said that Dr. Murray was grossly negligent. They had no burden to prove that there was any intent in this, only that he was grossly negligent and thereby caused the death of Michael Jackson.
We're joined now by defense attorney Dana Cole, who's been with us throughout. And Dana, one of the things that we were speaking of is, you know, everyone hears the words beyond a reasonable doubt. Many people look at that sometimes, even the jurors, as shadow of a doubt. And you've said that in your cases, more than 150, you try to make sure the jury understands what is reasonable and what is unreasonable. They don't have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt what happened here.
No, the prosecution does not. However, saying that, proof beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest standard of proof that we have in law. So it's pretty high. You have to be virtually certain of the truth of the charge. You know, you have to be in the 90+% range. In fact, Gil Garcetti, our former district attorney here in LA County, was once quoted in the LA Times as saying that it needs to be in the 90+% range. So it is very high, but compared to a civil case, car accident, a breach of contract, something like that, it's just which side is more likely. You know, and we sometimes refer to that as 51% proof, as opposed to the beyond the reasonable doubt, which is much, much higher.
After having sort of analyzed the prosecution's case and we looked at the defense's case, you as a defense attorney, would you have done anything differently in presenting the defense's case? Well,
you know, that's a very tough question because this was a highly technical case and you really had to study the science. You had to work with your expert. And in this case, you know, they had Dr. Paul White. The defense had Dr. White. And unfortunately, I think he had problems with the judge, and he had so much that he had to try to counteract with Dr. Schaefer. This Dr. Schaefer had 17 points of gross misconduct. You know, and to me, that was almost a bit of overkill. I don't know that he had to go that far. He was truly gilding the lily. But Dr. White had his work cut out for him in trying to negate all of these points, and it was just it was almost overwhelming.
Dr. Schaefer was extreme. He was adamant. He was convinced that of Murray's guilt, for that matter. I mean, he was very stern in his testimony, I thought.
Extremely, yeah. It was powerful. He was definitely very persuasive, but I don't know. If this is a not guilty, then I think the jury may feel that he went too far and he was sort of kicking a man while he was down, so to speak.
We're looking at some of these jurors, jury number 4, and we've been going through who they are. Certainly we are not attaching names to them, but you have mentioned in the time that we've been on the air, you were impressed with this jury pool.
Right. I thought for the most part it seems to be a more educated group. It's definitely a diverse group, but there are decent, good occupations represented on this jury. So, you know, you're not dealing with this sort of a lower intelligence group of people.
It's an international flavor as well.
That's true. That's right. Different ethnicities, that type of thing. You know, I'm sort of impressed that they took their time with this. Nobody rushed anything, and they really wanted to do the right thing here. So we'll see what that decision is.
And what of the, we're looking at video, actually that's live, but we had some video. That was video that we saw of Michael Jackson's family coming into the courthouse. But Dana, what about the evidence, the fingerprint evidence? One fingerprint found and then no fingerprints found? Explain that.
Well, yeah, that was sort of, again, a key point for the prosecution and difficulty for the defense, in that if the theory is Michael Jackson delivered by himself the fatal dose, one could argue that his fingerprint should have been on something. It should have been on the vial, or it should have been on the syringe, or it should have been on the plunger. It should have been somewhere. But for the defense, unfortunately, that did not occur.
Except playing devil's advocate, the defense could present, and without seeing the actual testimony, the defense could present that Alberto Alvarez's fingerprints were not on the saline bag. So was that their effort to say, okay, hey, look, his fingerprints weren't on it, but then the fingerprints weren't found on this saline bag either?
That was actually one of their strongest arguments that they repeated a few times. And you're absolutely right, Philip. Everything doesn't get fingerprints. Fingerprints don't transfer onto every single surface. So just because Michael Jackson's fingerprint was not on the syringe doesn't mean he didn't deliver the fatal dose. But that certainly would have been pretty fantastic evidence for the defense had it been there.
Well, one quick thing is we don't want to retry the whole case, but you and I, and we've all spoken of this, this was streamlined. This, you know, we think back of these fingerprints, they actually acknowledge, okay, we're not going to go into fingerprint experts and go through that mundane testimony. They did a pretty streamlined, fast-tracked case here.
In some respect, although...
I mean, saying 6 weeks is short.
Yeah, but like Dr. Schaefer, I wouldn't necessarily call his testimony streamlined. I mean, he was there endlessly, going at point after point after point. But you're right, the parties did stipulate to a lot of other things that did make the trial go more quickly.
Dana, in talking about these jurors, you've got 7 men, 5 women, a professor, a postman, a bus driver. They come sort of from all walks. Now, when they come out and they're allowed to speak to the media, you mentioned that they... what did you mention? That they're not able to have book deals or anything like that for a certain amount of time?
You will hear, after the verdict is delivered, the judge is going to give a final instruction to that jury at the time he discharges the jury and thanks them for their jury service. He's going to tell them, and he's going to order them not to engage in any type of contract for any type of appearance, book deal, or whatever that involves payment of money for the next 90 days. Now, it becomes very murky because a lot of these jurors get flown to New York, put up at nice hotels, put up at nice hotels, and is that receiving compensation or payment? And that definitely is a murky area. But he's going to tell them, don't enter into any deal for the next 90 days.
Let's go to Rob Hayes, who is outside the courthouse in downtown Los Angeles. Rob.
Hey, Philip, we're down here in what is considered to be the pit. This is the news conference area. If there's going to be a news conference from the Jackson side of the case, it will be here. We're told that members of the prosecutors, the prosecution, will be up on the 12th floor. They're going to be giving any kind of news conference after the verdict is read. We'll be upstairs on the 12th floor. Outside here, it's just a circus, and I don't even know if that's fair to call it a circus. If it's fair to the circus, it is really getting a little bit overcrowded right now. It's more of a 3-ring circus, if you will, because we've got hundreds of members of the media here surrounded by this large group that a good chunk of them are in support of Dr. Conrad Murray. On the other side is a group that wants Murray convicted, and then surrounding all of this are hundreds of police officers from LAPD. We've seen some sheriff's deputies out here as well. So it is really turning into a circus atmosphere.